TGC Requiem, we're back with another match, Sultai Control League. So far, the league, we're 3-0, 6-0 in games. Um, this is game one. Opponent Shady Rat here. We get to be on the play. Honestly, a really good looking hand. I mean, Serum Visions, we should hopefully find something. If not, we have access to a couple Fatal Push and a Spell Snare. And Liliana's been great for us so far in this league. So absolutely keep. Opponent mulligans down to 6. So we actually draw our second land and get access to Tar Pit, which I'm pretty sure we'll put on top. Probably just planning to play that as our next turn. And it's possible I even kept Thought Scour on top of there. Yeah. So right underneath the Creeping Tar Pit's the Thought Scour. That'll help feed our Snapcaster Mage. So Mishra's Bauble. I was going to say, pretty sure at that point we're either playing Death Shadow or probably the new version of Death Shadow or Abzan, but the Street Wraith makes it pretty clear that we are playing Death Shadow. And this is actually my first match against the new version of Death Shadow. I actually was playing the old Death Shadow quite a bit during the period that I was not recording videos. It was a really fun deck, but the new one looks quite a bit different, a bit less explosive. Ended up talking to my opponent quite a bit after this match, or during the match even, and he was kind of talking about how it's much more resilient. I look forward to giving it a run because it's a fun deck. Maybe I'll do that soon. It would have been fun to record some videos while it was at its broken explosiveness. Here he's going to go for Inquisition. Takes a Snapcaster Mage. Knowing that mostly the creatures are Tarmogoyf and Death Shadow, the Fatal Pushes seem like they might be a little bit better, but maybe he's got his game plan. I think we just throw the Tar Pit out there now, hold up a Fatal Push. He also, it's also worth noting that the new version, the new Shadow Jund, Death Shadow Jund, is really heavy on counter hand disruption. So they run like 4 Inquisition and 3 Thought Seize. So I mean they can really pick your hand apart good. Doesn't do anything. I know they ran a couple Abrupt Decay, so I think I hesitate on casting Liliana here, and I think that's a mistake. It's possible that actually costs me in this game. Another Bauble. We just go for a Thought Scour. Get our Braiding Pool. Do another Thought Scour. Oh wait, no, sorry, we just fetch for a sideways Thought Scour. There we go. Alright, so looking good. We can run out of Tassiger here. Still holding up Fatal Push. But now I decide to run out Liliana. And down ticker. Okay. Oh man. Yeah, so I think this is, looking back at this is definitely a mistake. So I basically for no reason didn't run her out the turn before. So, and I recognize this now, remembering the match. The new Death Shadow Jund doesn't play Lightning Bolt, it plays Tarfire, which is a tribal instant. And so he can do 2 damage. So I made 2 mistakes. One, I could have just run out the Liliana the previous turn. He didn't have a creature. Their creatures aren't really haste creatures. If he had a couple burn spells, he'd have to waste them all to really do the damage to Liliana to kill it anyway, which just is good for us. Secondly, we run it out now in down tick to get our Snapcaster back. part of this is obviously Liliana is probably not killing any of his creatures, and so I definitely wanted to get the Snapcaster back so that I could have access to all these fatal pushes again and yada yada yada. But definitely should have just upticked her turn 3, upticked her turn 4. Would have been able to cast Tassiger last turn. Anyway, not a whole lot to do now. So we end up returning Snapcaster, and then I think he just Tarfires us here, if I recall, redirecting it to Liliana. What a shame. Definitely a big mistake there. Alright, Whispers of Emrakul. So this is actually... Delirium is easily turned on his side, so this is basically like him to Turok. And... oh my gosh, yes. Oh, as I watch this back, this is so brutal. We actually end up losing a Fatal Push and a Tassiger. So we could have had an upticking Liliana, maybe put the pressure on him to have to play a creature, which would allow us to Fatal Push. That would have allowed us the next turn to play Tassiger, have Tassiger on the battlefield, which I don't think they have a whole lot of removal that can even kill Tassiger. But he gets to him, hits 2 of the best cards that we had in hand, and now we are, I wouldn't say creatureless, but with Snapcaster we're not fighting with the same level of creature that they're fighting with now. So we are actually going to snap Fatal Push here. That way we still have access to the Fatal Push in hand. We still have access to it through Revolt if we need it at the moment. Also have access to Spell Snare. He doesn't do anything, so we fetch for another land. I don't think we really need to worry about Revolt in this matchup anyway. It's pretty much just Death Shadow and Tarmogoyf. It's possible we could have fired up Creeping Tar Pit there. This creature's not having haste. Means we're really only at risk if he has a Tar Fire. Granted, with Street Wraith and Baubles, he's not really burning through his cards too fast, so it may be safer to keep Counter Squall up. or wait until we can keep Counter Squall up. And or keep Counter Squall up against a hand disruption spell here, but as Snapcaster is our only creature, we're going to go ahead and Counter Squall this. Puts us on a really quick clock with our opponent. So again, we could activate a Tar Pit here. Actually, activating a Tar Pit here is not so bad. At this moment, we could put our opponent down to 1, meaning they can't fetch or shock. And we would still have a black-blue mana source up for push or snare. But I'm pretty confident that I failed to do this. With Grim Flayer, that does kind of change things. It's possible that I just want to throw out a Grim Flayer after attacks. Oh, so he actually has Kolaghan's Command. And this is why I think I wanted to do Cryptic here. Creeping Tar Pit, rather. If I had Creeping Tar Pit, granted he's going to kill the Creeping Tar Pit, so we're going to put him down to 4. But then we're going to be able to play a Grim Flayer, and the next turn be prepared to creep. You know, we're going to be able to... oh no, that's right. If we had attacked with the Creeping Tar Pit, we wouldn't be able to Grim Flayer. And I think that's, yeah, so I'm pretty sure that is why. I forgot that the new build runs Kolaghan's Command. Um, so now the Grim Flayer is going to look a lot weaker when it's faced up against the Death Shadow, though we do have Fatal Push. He Inquisitions away our Fatal Push. Ugh. Throws down the Death Shadow, 7/7. We can't attack through it. We're just going to have to chump for a turn, attack in with the Creeping Tar Pit. And then we do have Spell Snare, so actually at this point we look to have kind of gotten away with one. I guess if he pulls a Tarfire out, a third Tarfire, which seems unlikely, he'll get our Creeping Tar Pit the next turn. But if he goes, I mean, he attacks here, he doesn't have Trample. Without Temur Battle Rage, he can't get lethal through as far as I can tell. And we have Spell Snare for the Temur Battle Rage. They only run 2 Temur Battle Rages now. So he goes to play it, we Spell Snare it. Boom. But then he keeps back the blocker, which makes sense. So we're going to Creeping Tar Pit here. And we just kind of hope he doesn't have a Tarfire. And even if he does, we have our backup for the next turn. He gets it. Alright, so 3 Tarfires. Pretty sure he just has the 1 Tarfire. I guess he could probably have another Kolaghan's Command that could get a Creeping Tar Pit. But he'd need another Temur Battle Rage to get his own lethal through, and they only run 2. And he has the second Temur Battle Rage. So, definitely looking back at this game, I feel like I made several key mistakes that really cost me this game. Kind of frustrating to look back and see it, but a great learning experience. Also shows me how much more resilient the new version is, although I think the Whispers of Emrakul, not necessarily the greatest card, maybe out of the sideboard in some matchups where obviously you're getting Delirium pretty good, so it's probably pretty good as a discard spell against certain opponents. I don't know that it's main deckable worthy. But let's go to game 2 here. Again, losing the first game of this match. See if we can learn from those lessons in the first game. So if I hadn't, I probably didn't note this, in this match, I'm only running, if you look at the deck list on the right, this is my current deck list. I'm only running 1 Liliana of the Last Hope during this particular league. The other one was a Collective Brutality at the time, and the Doomblade was actually an Abrupt Decay at the time. So just as a heads up, sideboarding wise, I'm pretty sure I bring in the Surgical Extraction. I don't remember if I brought in all the Fulminator Mages. I might have brought 1 or 2 in. Against the old deck, if you could get to that point where you blew up one of their lands, you could really lock them out of a portion of their deck. But now that it's Jund, I don't know if that's as effective. The games are more grindy, though, so it may be more effective, whereas in the old matchups with Fulminator Mage, you might just not be able to get a Fulminator Mage down fast enough. The Abrupt Decay would have come in. By the way, that other Abrupt Decay, would have been up there in the deck already, and so there was a Collective Brutality. It's possible I brought the Collective Brutalities in to kind of go after spells in hand, but I think that's about it. Maybe a Damnation, that's about... Oh no, I definitely would have brought in... I possibly would have brought in Negate. Pretty sure I took out all the Cryptics because I thought they were too slow. Definitely would have left in Go for the Throat, maybe cut a couple Spell Snare. Yeah, so I'm not 100% certain what all I would have brought in or out in this particular matchup. Looking at it now, I definitely think so Counter Squall could be pretty good because they do have a lot of spells that you can counter, and getting the damage on them is pretty good. I don't think I'd bring in Negate and or Dispel, actually, now that I think about it. Maybe I'd bring in like a Dispel, especially since I was cutting Cryptics. Surgical Extraction, the reason I thought that, if you can counter or kill their first Tarmogoyf or Death Shadow, those are really the only creatures they have, and so you can eat away their hand pretty well. Yeah, let's just get to the game. I'm just kind of looking at the list, trying to think through how I might have sideboarded, and we'll see what happens here. No real interaction, save the Dispel. We've got a Maelstrom Pulse. Our hand could get picked apart, and so I think because I know he's going to run so many hand disruption spells, I think I end up keeping this because that way he's not taking removal from me, and I can ideally with Serum Vision set up removal on top so I have it where he can't get to it. So Fulminator Mage and Brutality, I think we keep both on top. Brutality on top of Fulminator Mage. Being on the play, Fulminator Mage is much better here. Again, like I said, I think I brought a couple in. So we get the Thoughtseize, takes the Snapcaster, doesn't want us recurring. And I think we go for Collective Brutality. So we have him just discard Traverse, Shriekwa, Tarmogoyf. Obviously Traverse is what we're taking here because that's our only choice. Thoughtseizes again, assuming he's going to take the Maelstrom Pulse. He does. And this gives him the ability to put out a Tarmogoyf next turn. Still, life totals are moving pretty fast. Now I know from when I looked at his hand earlier that he has a couple lands, so I play the Fulminator Mage, but I don't actually blow anything up right away, because he's just going to get, whatever I blew up anyhow. So it gets the Tarmogoyf down. Player land, and I think we're planning on just, at the moment, letting him get one swing in with Goyf. So he swings with the Goyf. No, okay, so we do decide to block here, and pretty sure we blow up the Blood Crypt. So he cycles real quick, hoping to probably get like a Tar Fire he can cast off it before he lets it go. Doesn't find anything. I get an Overgrown Tomb. Creeping Tar Pit. Looking great with our Dispel and Counterspell. Not really. We're about to lose pretty quick with this this setup. We need some removal. At least now a Snapcaster makes us live for Maelstrom Pulse. So now he traverses, and we actually use Counter Squall here to put some damage on him. We draw another Creeping Tar Pit, so at this point there's really nothing for us to do except for attack with Creeping Tar Pit. We could just hold the Creeping Tar Pit up to jump block. However, we can do this and still leave Dispel up for Temur Battle Rage. So by attacking, we put him down to 4. Excuse me. Any removal or creature or Snapcaster the following turn, assuming he doesn't kill us the next turn, allows us to stay alive. So, and essentially do lethal to him shortly thereafter. So what we do need to do, though, is close the game quickly if there's a chance for us to do it. If he does any damage to himself, and he can't get lethal through. Those baubles. Temur Battle Rage will win it right here for him, except we had this Dispel, so he did not have it, so it wasn't to worry. Negate. So unfortunately now we are going to need to hold back Creeping Tar Pit as a blocker. Just hope we can buy one more turn. We do have Negate and Dispel to protect the Tar Pit against removal before blocks. Fatal Push. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. So we're going to throw Creeping Tar Pit up again. Now we only have access to Dispel or Fatal Push. I'll let you in on a secret. It's going to be Fatal Push. That's the card that matters here. And so by being proactive with that Creeping Tar Pit attack earlier, we have actually set ourselves up to be able to close this game out. Because if he plays another creature here, well, I guess it doesn't matter. So it looks like we're going to get it, right? Right, so actually, this is exactly it. If we hadn't made that initial attack with Creeping Tar Pit before we chump blocked with it the next turn, that Tarmogoyf would have lost us the game, because we would have had to do 4 more points of damage next turn instead of 3. And we actually then are able here to get the lethal damage through as our opponent is tapped out. And we get to even do it underneath the protection of Negate and Dispel. And we get a win in game 2. So we're going to move on to game 3. We are 1-1 in this game, or in this match. Ooh, so we end up mulliganing down to 5. Unfortunately, you know what, I'm just going to start this over. That was an accident. So we only have 1 land, and none of this stuff is fast enough to keep up. Oh, that's right, I was also running a Kalitas out of the sideboard at the time. Seems like a pretty terrible card to bring in. It's not what the matchup's about. 6 lands, so that makes sense why I mulligan the second hand. So we go down to 5, and we actually have a pretty good hand here. Access to all the colors we need. We are On the draw, with the ability to use Spell Snare, we have a removal spell for the first creature plus Surgical Extraction to ideally pull the set of them out of his hand. So this looks good, granted. Negate seems decent, so I would even potentially keep that on top. But Inquisition. Bye-bye Spell Snare. So it looks like he's going to go for a turn 2 Tarmogoyf. Oh, so I did actually put the negate on the bottom. The more I was thinking about it, I was like, really, we just need removal. Thoughtseize, ouch. So there goes the go for the throat. At least it means it's one less turn of Tarmogoyf beating us down, so he waits till next turn. Really nothing we can do with the Surgical Extraction since there's just Thoughtseize, Inquisition in the graveyard. At this point, play Creeping Tar Pit because nothing better to do. So finally he plays out his Tarmogoyf. And unfortunately, again, if we had had, say, just one piece of hand disruption, we could have go for the throated, the Tarmogoyf, and then surgical extracted it, getting rid of all 4 of them, which leaves him to just Death Shadow, which means he has to put his life pretty low to make it big. Now the Snapcaster draw is actually pretty decent here. That actually allows us, if he goes for another creature, to snap Spell Snare, or we actually have the mana up where we could get to 4 mana, snap Go for the Throat, and get the Tarmogoyf, and then Surgical Extract there. I guess it just depends on how this goes, though, because he might, Mishra's Bauble into, Tarfire into Temur Battle Rage, and even though we can't kill it, this turn we would have to commit the Snapcaster to Spell Snaring the Temur Battle Rage, otherwise we'd just lose at that point. So we just take 3, and so that actually is pretty exciting. So this gives us the ability to Snapcaster Go for the Throat. Liliana's troubling, though, because Snapcaster's not going to be able to get her. I guess Creeping Tar Pit can get her. Fatal Push, that's excellent. Problem is if he has Tarfire and we activate Creeping Tar Pit to attack the Liliana, so he can't get Creeping Tar Pit. I guess if he were to have Tarfire and fire the Tarfire off, before I go to attacks, I could still just use the mana from that to Fatal Push the Tarmogoyf. The problem is if he lets me get to attacks and then this turns into a Tarfire, we're in big trouble because now we've lost our 4th land, and we don't have the ability the next turn to Snapcaster Go for the Throat Tarmogoyf with Surgical Extraction. So I think I end up just Fatal Pushing. That way I'm able to hold up Snapcaster Fatal Push and Surgical Extraction the Tarmogoyf. So we get to look at his hand. He actually had a Tarmogoyf in hand, which is fantastic. So we actually get to take all the Tarmogoyfs. As noted, that basically, so it leaves him with a Dismember in hand, and essentially 4 Death Shadows. Technically he has a Street Race and he can cast them. Yeah, he has just enough mana to cast them. Neither Tarfire was in hand. But Dismember is the same thing though, right? He could have dismembered our land, so we actually ended up making the right play there. Oh, actually, he has also brought in Fulminator Mages, so okay. And obviously he has Liliana. So I make a little bit of a mistake here, I think. So he plays a Fulminator Mage. Yes, I remember now. So I actually fetch and don't bring this in upright. What I need to do here is on his end step, I needed to snap Fatal Push this Fulminator Mage. He would have blown up the Creeping Tar Pit. However, the Snapcaster would have been able to get in and put a little bit of damage in on Liliana, or force him to use his Dismember on the Snapcaster Mage. But I just decided to do it on end step. Without killing it. And then I decide to attack with Tar Pit and Snapcaster Mage, and this gets embarrassing. He then he makes a very good play of blocking my Snapcaster Mage and then blowing up my Tar Pit. And that may seem minor, but what it basically causes is his Liliana is now able to kill my Snapcaster without him having to use his Dismember, which makes the next creature that I have significantly worse in my attempt to pressure Liliana. And now we're getting to the point where she's close to ultimate. I don't actually have Cryptic Commands in my deck at this point. I have pulled them out, so I have no way to bounce her. I really have to pull an Abrupt Decay or a Maelstrom Pulse, or I'm pretty much dead. But now that I have Fulminator Mage, I can't even really put pressure on because Liliana gives him 0 power. So he still doesn't have to use his Dismember. And I think what makes it worse is I think he ends up getting a creature anyway. Right. So we're kind of like just locked out of this game at this point. We fight the good fight. We Fatal Push the Shadow. But at this point he's ultimating Liliana the next turn, which is a huge problem for us considering we don't have Cryptic Commands in. Otherwise we could potentially race, but we definitely can't now. So we have access to Fatal Push, and then Snapcaster, Fatal Push. Again, writing's on the wall. I already know I've lost this, but play it to the end. Scavenging Ooze gets another 4 tokens. So I did not see the Scavenging Ooze when I was looking through his list. But yeah, we're done here. I think I hold out one more draw step on the hope that I hit a Maelstrom Pulse or something, Damnation, and then Tarmogoyf and whatever. But this puts us down to 1, which, I mean, pretty much ends the game. Oh, and he Kolaghan's commands here. Actually could have killed us if he wanted to, but he ends up making us discard our card and returns, I think, Fulminator Mage to his hand, or Scavenging Ooze to his hand, rather. But he could have just finished us off right there. And at some point here, I eventually concede because I've lost. Boom. So, trying to think back here on the early part. This was a mulligan to 5. Opponent had a lot of hand disruption. Not a whole lot really we could do. We just really got picked apart. If we had had a full hand of 7, maybe it would have been a little bit different. I also think it may have been worth keeping in a couple cryptic commands in the matchup, just to potentially be able to bounce a Liliana, or if you get into a situation like this late and you have a Tarmogoyf of your own or something, you might still be able to race. So anyway, that is the first loss. So we lose 2-1 in this match. That puts us to 3-1 and 7-2, and we'll be back with the last match of this league shortly.